This is Automated Thought.
So when I saw The Last Jedi in the theater, when the movie was over, I sat there and I said to myself, wow, that was fantastic.
Expectations exceeded.
My best friend sent me a text and he asked me if The Last Jedi was the true sauce. To which I replied, oh yes, this is the true sauce. This movie, it has the sauce. The sauce is kind of our code word that means really, really good. You know, Breaking Bad has the sauce. Mr. Robot has the sauce. Does Frozen have the sauce? I say yes, he may not agree. The sauce is a matter of opinion, I suppose. But we both agreed that not only was The Last Jedi a fantastic movie, it was better than The Force Awakens. It made us like The Force Awakens more in retrospect, and all in all, it was a completely worthy continuation of the Star Wars saga. Rian Johnson, you done good. Rian Johnson has the sauce. But of course, since we live in today, and everybody hates everything at all times, a lot of people didn't really seem to like The Last Jedi. And of course, if that's your opinion, I'm not going to be able to change it. Nobody could ever really convince me that The Dark Knight Rises was the ending that the Batman trilogy deserved. It just wasn't. Anyway, when it came to The Last Jedi, over at my primary webpage, people were screaming at me about how much they didn't like it, and I heard some of the same criticisms over and over again. So after hearing each of these criticisms from multiple people multiple times, I just want to say,
oh, you were finished? Oh, well, allow me to retort.
I may not be able to change your mind, but if you really listen and pay attention to what I say in this video, you might find yourself rethinking some of these positions. Only one way to find out, so let's get started.
Duh, this movie was too liberal and like political and stuff. I don't want politics in Star Wars. It should be how it was when I was growing up.
They turn this into some progressive California liberalism, woman power, black guy, Asian woman, white woman, just a sweet casserole of humanity. Oh, hugging hands. And it has these different races and colors of people. Oh, fucking holding hands, you can just smell the decay of rotten flesh. Like this waft of shit.
I have some very bad news for anyone who thinks this. Star Wars was always political, and George Lucas has always been a huge liberal. The original Star Wars trilogy is not some space fairy tale that comes from Fantasyland. It is very specifically informed by the Vietnam era in which George Lucas grew up. In his own words, he was angry at the time, getting involved in all the causes. The draft was hanging over all of us, and we were bearded freako pre-hippies. Some people go as far as to say that Emperor Palpatine was based off Richard Nixon, and that the Ewoks, the noble savages who overcome the technologically advanced outsider, that they were literally the Viet Cong. That's right, George Lucas was siding with the Viet Cong against America, according to some. And see, this is why Luke Skywalker was so different than the sci-fi heroes of the past. Luke Skywalker was not some sort of square-jawed patriotic hero who was defending the good kingdom from some scary foreign invader. No, in Luke Skywalker's galaxy, the system, the establishment, the regime that was controlling everything, the Empire, they were the bad guys. The system sucked. And Luke wanted to run away from his suburban home out in Modesto, California, or Tatooine or whatever, and join the rebellion, the ragtag rebels. And the Empire was not a bunch of scary monsters. They were uptight white guys just doing their jobs. When Star Wars came out in 1977, the hippies themselves had kind of faded from the scene, but that yearning for independence and freedom and rebellion was still very much there. That's why Star Wars caught on in such a huge way. George Lucas was part of a generation that was questioning authority in America, and they were trying to find some new way forward. Star Wars is absolutely a product of that era and its politics. Lucas's particular genius was that he was able to wrap his politics in the trappings of science fiction so that they could be enjoyed by everyone, not just liberals. Because let's face it, the average American at the time didn't want to sympathize with the Viet Cong, but they would sympathize with the Ewoks. Because the Ewoks are cute, not some scary-looking guys with punji sticks. And then, of course, you have Lucas's prequel trilogy. Now, The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, which was before the Bush era. But the next two movies, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, they are completely informed by Bush-era politics. Again, George Lucas, the huge liberal, was not down with Bush in the Iraq War. He just wasn't. The entire point of the prequel trilogy is that when your government is declaring an endless war on some sort of foreign invader, you don't need to look at the foreign invader. You need to look at your leaders. That the climate of an ongoing war is what turns democracies into dictatorships. The Great Republic cannot be defeated from without. It can only be taken over from within. It happened in ancient Rome, and George Lucas thought that he saw it happening here in America. In the prequels, Palpatine is no longer Richard Nixon. He's Dick Cheney. Don't you remember all those scenes of, Jar Jar Binks voting more and more powers to the Chancellor? Or Padme Amidala's famous line, "So this is how freedom dies," to thunderous applause.
That's exactly the type of thing that California liberals saw happening during the Bush years, and we didn't like it.
And heck, these concerns are still with us. Everyone knows that the second that Donald Trump nukes North Korea, or if we suffer another terrorist attack like 9/11, about 30% of the American population is just going to go,
Duh, now Donald Trump is king and we have to do whatever he says, else the bad guys win.
It's still happening, it's still going on, and it still sucks. This is all political. This is all politics. I really can't believe that people have forgotten this so suddenly.
You see this villainous character? His name is Newt Gunray. Newt Gingrich. Ronald Ray Gun. Do I have to draw you a freaking map?
And of course, Bush was replaced in the presidency by Obama, whom George Lucas called a hero. What else can I say? Star Wars is political. Star Wars was always political. So if you think that The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi have politics in them, liberal California politics, well, guess what? That's the way it's supposed to be, because that's the way it always was. Of course, if you consider yourself a member of the alt-right, and if your politics aren't liberal, then maybe you're just noticing it for the first time. That's not a problem with Star Wars. That's a problem with you.
Yeah, well anyway, The Last Jedi was still way too feminist. They shoehorned in all these female characters, and why does Rey have to be a girl in the first place? Star Wars doesn't belong to girls, it's a guy thing. That's how it should be.
You see this? You are a worthless freaking piece of plastic. You're the worst thing I've ever seen in freaking Star Wars. You're the worst character. I hate your face. I hate you, Daisy Ridley. You're a freaking piece of garbage. I hope your career dies in 2020.
Liberalism, woman power.
So, I guess you never saw that concept art from Ralph McQuarrie? Back from when Lucas was considering making Luke a girl named Kira, and that Lucas, if he had made episode 7, it would have starred Kira, who was later renamed Rey, and she was going to be trained by Luke Skywalker. You didn't know that, did you?
I know I'm going to start to sound like a broken record here, but when people complain that Star Wars has too much girl power now, I wonder if these people have ever seen a Star Wars movie in their life. Look, let's go back to the very beginning. Let's go back to the very first Star Wars movie, and let's watch this scene where Han and Luke are trying to save Leia from the Death Star, and she takes charge. Watch this.
What the hell are you doing?
Somebody has to save our skins. Into the dark, flyboy!
Oh my goodness, did you see that? She completely humiliated Luke. She just grabbed his blaster and began firing down the hall at the stormtroopers. Did you find that insulting? Luke didn't seem to. He just had that weird look on his face like, huh, hey, that worked. Cool. You see, Star Wars was always political, and Princess Leia was always a straight-up 1960s, 1970s badass feminist. She was not the helpless, bikini-clad space princess of yesteryear. She was the brand new radical woman looking to take charge. She spends all of Empire Strikes Back dressed in a sensible jacket and pants combo, and then when finally someone does put her in a space bikini, she chokes his fat ass to death. Feminism, Star Wars, like peas and carrots, baby. See, this is the thing with all these bizarre cultural criticisms coming from the alt-right. I feel like they've taken us back in time, to a time before I was even born. I'm left stumbling around like Agent Cooper at the end of Twin Peaks.
What year is this?
Seriously, what year is this? What year are you living in where feminism never happened? I feel like all these young alt-righters, they've been stricken by this very powerful form of cultural amnesia. I'm being completely honest when I say that if they made a new sitcom today where a sassy, spirited, red-headed actress was married to a Hispanic guy, they would call that white genocide. They would say there was something wrong with that because they don't remember I Love Lucy, which happened like 70 years ago. All you nerds out there, don't you remember all the strong female heroes from movies just in the last 10 or 20 years? You know, like Celine from the Underworld series, or Alice from the Resident Evil movies. These are boy geek movies that star ass-kicking babes. You've never seen this before? What about one of the most beloved strong female characters, Leeloo from The Fifth Element?
Leeloo Dallas Multipass.
Yeah.
Multipass.
She knows.
She wasn't just the female lead character, she was like some kind of living god. She spoke every language, she could do amazing things, she could, you know, beat up 10 gigantic aliens all at once with her bare hands. She could have just, you know, punched Bruce Willis and broken his neck with a single swipe of her hand. Did you feel insulted by Leeloo that she was so powerful? Was she overpowered? Was she a Mary Sue? Nobody said that at the time. Nobody says it now. Culturally, people have gone crazy. That's the only explanation. Why does Rey, the main character, have to be a girl? Well, why not? In the first movie, The Force Awakens, there was no overwhelming necessity for her to be female, but by the end of The Last Jedi, I think we have our answer. Rey is a girl and Kylo Ren is a guy, because there's clearly some sort of love-hate, stalker, unrequited love relationship developing between the two of them. Kylo Ren clearly likes her. He's seized control of the First Order, he has all the power in the world, but he can't get the one thing he really wants: a cute girlfriend who is strong in the Force. I hate to break it to all the Reylo shippers out there, but they're probably not going to end up together. The original Star Wars was about an evil father trying to seduce his son to the dark side. This movie is about a troubled man who's trying to drag his crush to the dark side. It's about a woman who is trying to save a man who probably can't be saved. That seems to be the thing going on here. That's the dynamic, that's the whole plot. Sure, you could do that with two dudes. You could have Rey be a guy and Kylo be a guy, but that might be a little too progressive for some people, if you know what I mean. Heck, if the genders were reversed, I'd like it just as much. If Rey was a young man and he was being seduced by Kylo Ren, that would actually be kind of sexy. I would be into that. But anyway, they went the way they did. Rey's a girl, Kylo's a guy.
Yeah, but it's like an insult to young men that the young man in the movie's the bad guy. He's the villain. Why do they hate young men?
Look, I'm a white guy myself, and I can tell you this. If you can't relate to Rey, Finn, and Poe as characters, then there's really something wrong with you. They are unbelievably charming, just completely likable. The characters and the actors portraying them. Second of all, what's wrong with being a villain? Villains are great. We love villains. There is nothing wrong with being a villain. Who's the most memorable character in The Dark Knight? No Country for Old Men, Silence of the Lambs, the villains. And you know what? By the end of The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren is a great villain. Hey, he did something that Darth Vader was never able to do. He was able to overthrow his Dark Master and take his place on the throne. I'm not sure what's going to happen to him in the third film, but I hope he doesn't die. If I had my way, at the end of the third movie, he would be defeated, of course. He's going to be defeated. Maybe his face will be scarred up like his hero, Darth Vader. And maybe he'll be locked away in some sort of dark, underground, unbreak-outofable prison. But he's not even trying to escape anyway, because he's so despondent, so regretful. Rey will go on to great things, while he is sent to his room to think about what he's done. Maybe in some future trilogy, he could emerge after decades. He could be some sort of dark, remorseful, supreme badass. That would be fabulous. But anyway, he and Rey are co-equal characters. She's the hero, he's the villain. They're both necessary, they're both great. And Kylo Ren is not an insult to young men. In fact, Kylo Ren is a lot cooler than some of these neckbeards who are spouting all this misogynistic bullcrap on the internet. When you really think about it, Kylo did not mind that he was beaten in a lightsaber duel by a girl. He didn't even seem to hold a grudge. In fact, It seemed to make him like her more. Be more like Kylo. Appreciate the strong women in your life. But hey, in general, if you feel like female heroes are having a bit of a moment in the sun here, you're probably right. And that's a good thing. For so long in our movies, we've had these certain male hero archetypes that you see over and over again. There's the reluctant chosen one, like Harry Potter or Neo. There's the dark, soulless badass who just kills everything in his way. There's the jokey frat boy who always gets away in the nick of time and has really good luck. And you can have a lot of fun with those characters. But when you put a lady in the lead, it gives things just a different flavor. You can do things that we haven't really seen before. In general, female characters, they can be a little bit more vulnerable and passionate than male heroes are allowed to be. They can have these elements to them that are distinctly feminine, and that's great. Wonder Woman, the gems from Steven Universe, or my personal favorite, Korra from The Legend of Korra. She is a completely amazing character. She's the chosen one, she fights, she's strong, she saves the world, she gets beaten down, loses everything, has to crawl back from the brink, and in the end she saves the day again and ends up with the hot babe. We haven't really seen that before in pop culture. It's amazing, and it blows my mind that some people want to complain about it. To all my fellow white nerds out there, I just gotta tell you, having women and non-white people want to come join our party, that is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. You should be proud of it. Think of it this way. All this science fiction, superhero fantasy stuff, it was predominantly dreamed up by white nerds like George Lucas. And it was all so good and so popular that now everyone else wants to get involved. You hear all these stories about the girl who grew up loving Star Wars, about the black kid who was really into anime, even though his peers didn't think it was, tough enough or whatever. If they want to join the white nerd geek party, let them! The more the merrier, I say. I want to go on record as saying that I am fully in favor of nearly all cultural appropriation. It's a good thing, it always is, and you can't stop it. If a white guy can rap, a black guy can be a Jedi. Fair is fair. In some ways, America is divided more than ever, politically. But in terms of our pop culture, we're actually coming together, and things are more unified than they've ever been. We find ourselves living in this America where no matter who you are or what you look like, you can do or be anything or be interested in anything. You can be a white girl who loves superheroes. You can be a straight black guy who's into fashion design. You can be a nerdy Asian kid who's obsessed with combat sports. You can be a gay guy who's into football. Anything goes. And you know what? That is frickin' beautiful. And hey, if you're so into your straight white male heroes, maybe you should listen to them from time to time. Imagine what they would think about all this stuff that you write on the internet. Come on, what would Captain America say about Gamergate? I know what Captain America would say about Gamergate. He would say, "Boys, you're young men now, and as men it is your duty and privilege to respect all women, even if you happen to think they're wrong about these fancy electric games that you love so much. Disrespecting women and cursing at them, that happens in other countries, not in America."
Whatever. I don't like how they're changing the Force. How come Leia can fly back into the ship from space? And what's the deal with Luke, cutting himself off from the Force? It's like they're changing the Force and just making stuff up. That shouldn't be allowed.
I hate to break it to you, but the Force is not a real thing. The Force is essentially magic. And do you know what magic really is? Magic does not exist anywhere except in the worlds of fiction. And what it essentially is a fictional amplification of any sort of human wish or intent. Humans are the only animals that can look at the world and wish that we could do things that we really can't. Whether it's teleportation, telepathy, levitation, throwing fireballs, whatever, it's something that we cannot do, but we wish we could. We have the imagination to think of things that don't really exist. Imagination is the only true magic there is. It's kind of flabbergasting that I have to explain this to people. You know what I blame? I blame video games. In video games, there are strict rules. Characters have arsenals, and every action is repeatable and the same every time. But video games are not movies. Video games are not stories. Nor should they be. As far as anyone knows, there is no rule book where it says exactly what a Jedi can and cannot do with the Force. Think of it this way. In the original Star Wars movie, nobody makes anything move using just their mind. In The Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is trapped in the cave by the ice monster, and he reaches out and pulls the lightsaber into his hand, that was the first time that had ever been done in a Star Wars movie. They just made that up. At the end of Attack of the Clones, when Yoda was fighting Count Dooku, they just made up this thing that said that even though Yoda is really old and rickety, he can duel using the Force to move his body. He's not using his muscles, he's using the Force to propel himself around like a crazy bumblebee. They just made that up. At the end of the Return of the Jedi, we learned that the Emperor can use Force lightning. For the longest time, we didn't know if anyone else could ever do that or if it was just something that only the Emperor could do. Then in Attack of the Clones, we learned that, yeah, Count Dooku can do it too. Everyone can do it. The things that characters do with the Force, they're just amplifications of some sort of desire that they have. When Leia flies back into the ship, it's just symbolic of her overwhelming desire to stay alive, to continue the fight. When Luke cuts himself off from the Force, that's just expressing his desire to escape everything from his old life, to numb himself. In real life, he would just be, drinking too much. He removes his forwarding address from the post office. The Force can be used in almost any way, and it'll be used in different ways in the future. That's how it should be.
I remember the days when we liked it when filmmakers would show us something we hadn't seen before, came up with something new. We didn't whine as if they broke some sort of rule. You kids today are conformists, and I don't like it.
Yeah, but Ghost Yoda summoned a lightning bolt to burn the tree with the books in it. That's not allowed. Ghosts shouldn't be allowed to mess with stuff.
Let me guess, you're wondering why Ghost Yoda didn't just go to Snoke's ship and kill Snoke with a lightning bolt. You're thinking that, aren't you?
Yes.
And I suppose you wonder why the ghost of Hamlet's father doesn't just appear in the middle of the court of Elsinore and tell everyone that it was Gertrude and Claudius who murdered him.
Maybe.
This is all symbolism. This is all myth. The reason that Star Wars is correctly classified as a science fantasy rather than as science fiction is because it's not really concerned with the future or technology. It is not the future. Star Wars is about the past. The thing about Star Wars is you could change the spaceships into dragons and, change the Force into witchcraft or whatever, and you could take these stories back in time and tell them at any point in human history, and they would be comprehensible. You could take the story of Luke and Darth Vader and Rey and Kylo Ren and Supreme Leader Snoke and translate it into ancient Babylonian, and then go tell it around a fire in some tiny goat-herding village, and the people there would understand what you were talking about. The entire scene with Ghost Yoda is something that's happened 1,000 times before in fiction. It's based on the simple human capacity to think of someone who's no longer alive and kind of wonder what they would say. How would the old master think about things? What would my father say? What would they do? Ghost Yoda is expressing this sort of wisdom that Luke is coming to. Luke realizes that the past should die, but he can't quite bring himself to do it. But he taps into a little bit of Yoda's wisdom. Yoda is like the laughing Buddha who realizes that all existence is temporary and that nothing can be held on to. And this image of Yoda takes the action and completes what Luke could not do. Ghost Yoda is not a video game character who can just do this over and over again whenever he wants to. Star Wars is a mythic story about miracles and things that may only happen once and never again. That's what makes it so special. That's what makes it so interesting. Stop thinking about it like a video game. Star Wars is not a video game. I don't like video games. I don't play video games.
Yeah, okay, but, Yoda could have still gone and killed Snoke and Kylo Ren with a couple of lightning bolts. That would have ended the war.
Whew. This video is going on a little bit longer than I thought. I think I'm going to break this whole thing up into 2 parts. So, good night for now, and stay tuned next week for Jibbering About the Last Jedi Part 2, because we're going to go even deeper, and together we may find some way to return to sanity. Automated thought, out!
It's like, oh my god. It's like, oh my god. It's like, oh my god.